Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. We get a link tree with all kinds of links over there to our Patreon and our Discord server and all the things that you can click to your heart's content.
Yes.
Before we get into the show, this is Trigger Warning. This is a horror podcast. We talk about horror things, so we could delve into sensitive subject. There may be discussions of violence or self-harm or curses words. And with that out of the way, we can say fucking shit now. Talk about it. Some fucked up shit. No, it's not fucked up shit, but it is fucked up shit, but in a good way, a psychology way.
Yes, yeah. Maybe.
We'll
see.
Yeah. It's also
you
fun.
Never know what comes up. It's the whole reason for the disclaimer.
Mm-hmm. Now we also want to thank our Patreons. Steve and I both live paycheck to paycheck, so we understand how meaningful it can be even to offer $1 here or there. Yes. But that being said, there is also a free tier. You don't even have to offer $1. You can just sign up for Patreon and pledge your support. Which you should. It's free, right? Why not?
Yes.
It's no money.
Yeah.
You can do that. There's a $1 tier. There are several tiers with several benefits.
Today we are talking to Mr. Darin Reed, production manager, producer, and director, best known for his work with Final Destination 5, The Conjuring 2, It, Chapters 1 and 2, Final Destination Bloodlines, Amusement, and many other things. Welcome.
Oh, thanks so much, guys.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Actually, the theme of this interview is going to be less about your body of work and more about what you yourself have been a fan of, and also some, maybe personal life stuff. But that said, it's not meant to be a therapy session. So if there's any questions that we ask that you don't want to answer, you just say pass and we'll move on. But starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Well, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and my first love was dinosaurs. Phoenix was scary back then. It wasn't the metropolitan sort of city it is now. Like the downtown back then was a place you just didn't go after dark and such. But
it was. But anyways,
it was. And I come from a desert family. My family settled in the West in a place called Mud Springs, Arizona, in 1900, and. We have a lot of family stories. They had very close relationships with the Native Americans of Arizona. They bought and sold and traded with them and were privy to some sacred dances that outsiders weren't, allowed to see. And so it was that sort of heritage. But one of the legends in our family is that when my grandmother was 5, like she and her siblings would have to hunt rattlesnakes to eat, so it's that kind of desert background. But anyways, I digress. I grew up in Phoenix and my first love was dinosaurs. And then that led to Godzilla, who I still just absolutely love. I'm just a huge fan of that character and all the franchises. And there was a show in Phoenix that used to come on every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. called World Beyond. It was on our local KPHO TV5, our local station, and it showed all the great horror films, Universal, a lot of Hammer, Godzilla films, things like that. And I was a real shy, skinny, introverted at school. I lived to make it to Saturday to watch that program. And you probably hear this from a lot of people because you guys are immersed in this world, but I can't exactly say why I love monsters so much. And in my old age now, sometimes I'll reflect on that. Like, is it trying to control our fear or just we like fantastic things? I don't know. But when I was growing up, comic books and monster movies and science fiction was for the nerds. Like we were the outcasts, the introverts that got picked on. And again, in my older age, to see how widespread and mainstream it is now is really shocking for me because I'm like, you've got, the cool crowd now knows Marvel. And I was like, when I was growing up, there were only a handful of us who knew who Captain America and Thor and all those characters were. But to go back to your question, I don't know what drew me to, or any of us to horrors and monsters, but I love them from as long as I can remember. It's always been an interest of mine and a fascination. And as I've gotten older, I'm fascinated by stories about facing fear, and things like that. So that's kind of the background.
Okay.
I'll add something, and this is going to sound strange, but you guys might appreciate it, because I'm a healthy skeptic on everything in life. But when I was a kid, I was a skinny asthmatic, had terrible asthma. And one of my earliest memories, I've always sought to understand what it was. And I can't really explain it, except I was in my parents' bedroom and I was utterly terrified of something on the wall that was opposite their bed. And I can still sort of feel that, sinister fear. But in some ways, I feel like a chunk of my life has been trying to figure out what that was or come to terms with it. And I know it all sounds very strange, but just being straightforward with you guys.
Okay. Interesting. Maybe just a shadow on the wall kind of thing.
Could have been.
Maybe.
Yeah. Could have been. Oh, I'm sorry. I stepped on you.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say, I like that you're also keeping the tradition alive. We've spoken to several guests, and there always just seems to be a local horror matinee thing on Saturday afternoon or Saturday morning. What was yours called again?
World Beyond.
World Beyond. That's one I haven't.
Yeah.
Usually it's like, Saturday horror, or mine was Creature Feature.
Oh, yeah.
I like that, though. World Beyond.
So let's see. Godzilla. Any particular movie or scene stand out to you as memorable?
I am such a fanatic, anything Godzilla, from the most low-budget mid-'60s to the legendary films, which I just love. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I'm so invested in the character that anytime he's in peril or anything, like, my eyes will tear up. I mean, that's the truth. And it goes back when I think it was 71, maybe 72, when Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster came out. My dad took me to the drive-in to see it. And have you guys ever seen the film?
No. Well, I haven't, okay. Chris.
Okay, the Smog Monster in its day, like when you're a little kid, is this incredibly scary thing made of sludge. And when he flies over the cities of Japan, it turns people to skeletons, and this kitten is kind of engulfed by the sludge. So I was terrified watching this thing. I was a little kid. And there's a scene towards the end where Godzilla is pushed into a pit or something and covered in sludge. I think, if my memory is correct. And I thought he was suffocating. And I remember I wanted to just burst out crying, but I didn't want anyone to see me that way. So I just sucked it in, So those things sort of shape our movie-going thing, because he, with the help of the Japanese army, he's revived, and then he literally tucks his tail under his legs and breathes his breath and flies after the Smog Monster and kills it. And I think it shaped, I've always loved the last minute rescue or the last minute, survival moment, whether it's Darth Vader saving his son or the cavalry to the rescue. I'm a real sucker for that stuff.
Okay. Interesting. Let's see. Dinosaurs, Godzilla. Any other media stand out to you from your childhood?
Just comic books and monster movies, typical of people like us.
Okay. Did you participate in Halloween when you were a kid?
Oh, I loved Halloween. I have such fond memories of that. Real 70s Halloween, which was still a kind of a holdover from the mid-century stuff, the cheap plastic Ben Cooper masks, and I just love that stuff. And I'm still a sucker. Halloween is my favorite holiday, and I just love everything about it, But what I really love about it is, or what I'm drawn to, is that more vintage stuff now. There's just something really comfortable about it, haystacks and black cats and all of that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite costume when you were a kid?
Not really. Not that I can remember. I think it was a skeleton, maybe.
How about a least favorite costume?
The one time I veered and my mom let me get this plastic kind of ghoul mask. It wasn't a whole outfit. It was just the mask. It was one of those Phoenix. In Arizona, Halloween can be two ways. It can either be blistering hot or very desert cold. That one was hot, and I died in that mask, and I regretted it. It was miserable. My mom knew what she was doing when she warned me not to do it.
As someone who has built a giant foam cosplay Warhammer suit, I can definitely relate with the I'm going to die of heat stroke. I was actually in the Dragon Con parade at one point with this costume, and I had to duck out because I'm like, well, I don't want to fuck up the parade and pass out of heat stroke, so I'm just going to go sit down.
They're supposedly making the Warhammer, or going to make the Warhammer film with Henry Cavill. I know it's a passion of his.
Oh yeah,
Heard,
series on Amazon. They're still working on it. I saw an update the other day. They said I think he's having some battles with production similar to what they did on The Witcher. So, yeah, I know, right? Henry Cavill, King of the Nerds, sticking up for lore. But no, it was good to hear that there was still something going on with it, because I hadn't heard about it in months.
Yeah, hopefully they get that off, because I know he's very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Very passionate.
As are many other people who would love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was anybody in your family a fan of horror when you were a kid?
My dad watched with me. He wasn't at the nerd level, but he was a fan. And
supportive.
Yeah, supportive, yeah.
Okay. Was there a dividing line for you? Meaning, some of our guests have reported that early on they were afraid of horror, but then after a dividing line, they became, it became enjoyable to them. Was it like that for you, or was it always enjoyable?
That's a good question. I think that I remember as a kid being terrified to sit there in front of it. I mean, truly terrified. Like, there was a TV in our living room that the family watched, and then there was this tiny little black and white. And some nights, they'd be watching, the network TV. It was pre-cable. And so I would put the black and white in my room and turn on Chiller or something like that. And I remember being so terrified I had to watch from the hallway. I couldn't be close to the screen, but I always stuck through. And then at a certain point, like all of us, you just become, more immune to it, because maybe you're more worried about, real life terrors or stuff like that.
That actually is the next question, which is, did you encounter anything in your real life as a kid that terrified you?
Good question. I was always afraid of failing. I was afraid of public speaking. Not too thrilled of spiders, but I'm a vegetarian, so I have perfected a way of taking a Starbucks cup and getting them out of my place without harming them.
That's nice.
Stuff like that. It was, I think the typical teenage stuff.
Okay. Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you were exceptionally safe or felt at bliss?
No.
You're not the only person who said that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just me.
Hectic.
I'm not that guy. I know a lot of people who are like that, who, kids in the neighborhood, kids I went to school with, people I've worked with who are so comfortable all the time and at ease and unflappable. And I'm like, I wish I was like that. I'm not.
So just to reframe the question, I'm not talking about being perpetually happy or calm or at ease. I was saying, was there a particular moment that stood out to you as a memory of going, being really happy in a particular moment, or safe or blissful?
Yeah, I think I had pleasant childhood moments, like we all do, of my cousins and I used to spend the night at my grandmother's house, and we always felt this kind of sense of freedom, because we were out, we were outside of the parental, control thing and things like that, watching Saturday Night Live and watching horror films. Star Wars, seeing that first run was just a big deal. And Superman too, the 78, all of those things were very, 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 very fond memories of that.
Okay. Did you have any reoccurring dreams or nightmares when you were a kid?
I have always had night terrors for some reason. And most of them I can't remember. But I used to, even as a young adult, I would wake people up with screaming and yelling, and they'd wake me up and I'd be like, I don't know what that was. My current recurring nightmare is being ill prepared. I at least once a month I have this nightmare of I'm trying to graduate from college and I'm not prepared for a test, or in it, and it takes different forms, but it's always about there's a deadline that has a big importance to your life, and I'm not prepared for it.
Mm. Yeah, that's fairly common for adult years. I like to say that we're not just pattern finding machines or emotion processing machines, and often a lot of our dreams are our brain putting us in different situations and saying, "How would you handle this?"
Oh, that's a great way to look at it. That actually makes me feel more positive about
it. It's testing you. It's preparing you.
Yes.
Let's see. So these next two questions come as a pair. I'll start with the negative one so we can end on the positive one. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
Yes, it was when I was, I think, even pre-kindergarten. Okay. I was playing on some kind of structure with the neighbor next door, and we were excited. You know, we were kids, we were yelling, and I accidentally pushed him and he fell and bruised his head, and I was devastated. I was like, you know, it wasn't a push out of anger or antagonism. It was like
reactionary.
Yeah.
Reactionary. And his mother ran out and grabbed him, and she was bawling, and I just sat there on this structure. I want to say it was a doghouse, but I don't think it was. And I just remember feeling so awful. And I think it kind of gave me an inbound sense of guilt my whole life for things. I have found myself my whole life taking responsibility for things that I'm not responsible for. And I always think back and think, like, was it because of the neighbor, you know, when you knocked him off accidentally? But that was the first one.
Chris can relate.
Yep. Mine was very similar. Pre-K, I think I was in preschool, and I was being backed down by a teacher. I had done something, so I was in trouble. So, you know, they were doing the classic overarching "you're in trouble" step towards me, and I just backing away in terror, and I fell on this girl behind me, and I actually managed to break her collarbone by falling on her.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's not your fault, obviously.
Exactly.
But you know.
But when you're that young, you don't know that.
You don't know that. Yeah. And, in my mind, the teacher shouldn't have been so threatening, but I'm sorry.
Well, she was very tall, so I think that was part of it. Maybe she wasn't so threatening. Small. Exactly. She was very tall. I was very small. It's entirely possible that she was just approaching me cautionally, whatever.
Yeah.
I get it. I relate. I sympathize.
Yes.
Very similar.
Flipping that one around, do you remember the first person you helped?
Yeah.
First person is tough. I don't want to self-aggrandize, but I have always been caring towards animals and people as much as, you know, I sort of could. I remember loaning my jacket to kids who didn't have one, you know, in the winter for a day and stuff like that, you know. And I remember my mom and I were in a checkout line at Safeway, and I had a quarter, and I saw like a muscular dystrophy thing where you stick the quarter in to donate. And I remember doing that, and my mom became really emotional, like, you know. So I'm sorry I can't give you a specific, but I've tried to be, you know, I'm a soft touch when someone is in need. Like I said, a human or an animal is in need. I do try to help, and I think I've always been that way. There's a flip side, like I've been mean and cruel, you know, as well, like we all have. But I do think that's part of my makeup that I probably inherited from my parents. They all had big hearts, really big hearts.
That is why we ask them as a pair. They are often balanced.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And now a 10-second self-advertising spot. Every Sunday night, I live stream drawing my horror-themed webcomic on our Discord server. If you want to come hang out and watch me draw, there's an invite link on the front page of horrormakesushappy.com. Back to the show.
Do you remember anything media-wise, books, movies, TV shows that really stood out to you in the horror genre from teenage years?
We did. When I was growing up, there wasn't that much horror in the teenage years. It kind of morphed into Star Wars, you know, science fiction. But, you know, I remember you guys are too young to remember this, but there were a lot of movies of the week when I was growing up that were horror themed, and they were awesome. You know, I watched one of them recently, and I wasn't a teenager when I had originally seen it. It was Steven Spielberg's, I think, his maybe second TV film after Duel. It was called Something Evil. And I had vague memories of it, and I remember watching it and thinking, it's not that scary. But as a kid, I was terrified about that stuff. In the teenage years was, Halloween, the original Halloween, which was just brilliant, and The Shining. And, when I was a teenager, like I said, it was a little bit more towards science fiction had started to become more mainstream. But I did read some Stephen King stuff, that Night Shift and The Stand, and I thought those were terrifying. But, in those years, I was still fascinated by horror, but I was kind of more in the Star Wars, Indiana Jones, the science fiction and fantasy, the sort of Shannara series, the Terry Brooks books and Tolkien and all that kind of thing. Dune, all those things was sort of took up the more of the teenage years.
It's not uncommon. I mean, it's kind of like 50-50. Some of the people we talk to, they're just horror fans straight through. And then some people, they're fans in their childhood, and then they kind of veer off in, teenage years, and then they come back to it as an adult.
Yeah. I mean, I was always a fan. I don't want to say otherwise, but, I did get preoccupied by, going out and doing all those things, clubs and all that stuff. But it was always there for me. I would be at a newsstand and see a horror magazine and buy it. It was always, my first love. And then when I was a young adult, I remember buying an issue of Fangoria magazine, and it referenced this book called the Arum Encyclopedia of Horror. And I bought it, and it opened up this world of films that I had never even heard of, Jean Rollin and Paul Naschy and all those international horror directors and stars and things. And that was kind of my second wave of fascination with horror, where I would go to the video stores and try to track down any of these films that, were sometimes had different titles than the original one to see them. And I just became really obsessive about it. Franco and all of those, Lucio Fulci and all of those international filmmakers, and also obscure American horror films that I'd never heard of before. And that was, I really look back on that time fondly, because I really immersed myself in the genre. And at that point, since VHS, you had video stores and films were coming out on VHS, there was much more, it was more easily accessible than just hoping and praying something would come on TV, the television to watch. Yeah.
I'd never heard of that encyclopedia, but I'm shocked that I spelled it correctly. Because I just Googled to make sure that I was getting the spelling correctly, and somehow I actually did get that correct.
I think I've got it on my bookshelf, but I believe it was Phil Hardy was the editor. Yes. And it's a great reference, back in its day. It's all pre-internet, of course, so we just didn't have access to stuff.
That's cool. I've been collecting horror trivia for a horror trivia game /night that we're working on, and I can relate. What I decided to do was just Google a list of 1,000 most popular horror films and go down it. And of course, it was ranked. It was on IMDb, and it was ranked by the ratings that other people have given these movies, and have of course come across quite a few that I'd never heard of before, and I would be surprised if quite a few people that I would talk to would have heard of some of these. But you having access to the encyclopedia, you probably have.
It could be. I'm getting older, so I am older, so my memory, it's sometimes it needs to be a little bit reactivated, but I can always pull this encyclopedia out.
Right. Well, let's see. You mentioned Something Evil by Name. Was there a particular scene that stood out to you when you were at least when you were a teen, if not even if it didn't hold up?
The first time I watched it, I was actually preteen, but there was a scene where it's the only thing I remembered about the film. A couple is driving home, and something hits their windshield, and their car crashes, and they die. And I literally rewatched this film on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and it's just the windshield kind of turns red and cracks. But as a young child, I remember being terrified by that. But as a teen, Halloween, the first time seeing that was so groundbreaking that there were just so many scenes in that. There's a scene where that's not Jason, is it? That's
Michael Myers.
Michael.
Michael Myers. See, my memory is not quite as fast as it used to be. There's a scene of him standing in the distance in the neighborhood that's just absolutely stunning. And
just the subtle details where he's just like hanging out of focus in the background. And sorry to chuckle so much at that. It's just, it reminded me of exactly that faux pas that someone did with an interview with Jamie Lee Curtis once. It was like on a morning show or something.
Yes, I've seen that clip.
It's not like you're being chased around by men in hockey masks, and she just like pauses and gives him this shit-eating grin. Look, that's the wrong movie, babe.
That's awesome.
So you're not the only one.
Yes.
There was another film when I was a teenager called The Innocents from the early 60s.
Sounds familiar.
There's a scene, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but there's just subtle scenes where the protagonist looks and you see what may or may not be a ghost, like across the pond, just staring there. And it's that subtle thing, I think, that gets me more than shock value,
Mm-hmm.
Is this the one where a guy builds a house that's a mirror image of the one that he lives in?
No, The Innocents it was a Henry James novel, and it's about a governess that goes to a remote mansion, and there's kind of something wrong with the children, and whether or not she's mentally ill or the house is haunted by their former gamesmen and their former mistress that took care of them.
Okay. Yes, I'm tracking now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been remade. I think it's been remade a couple of times.
It has.
And brilliant film in its day.
Okay. Yeah. Michael Myers standing off in the distance, ghost staring at you across the pond. Something about this looming.
And then the other one that just came to mind is when Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, came out. The title alone terrified me, but the bigger kids in the neighborhood were talking about it because they'd gone to see it. And, their description made it sound like, oh my God, this is just beyond belief, and I finally got the courage to go see it, and absolutely loved it, but in its day, it was just utterly terrifying.
Right. Yep. Any particular scene about that one that stood out to you?
There's a low angle, slow walk of one of the girls up to the.
I know exactly which one you're talking
about.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Red shorts, the swinging, the
swinging, swing.
Swing. Yeah. The swing. That thing. But yeah, that's an iconic shot right there.
Oh, so good.
There's a word that I want to use, but it's escaping me. This is going to bug me now.
Archetypal.
No, it's the same. It kind of describes all three of the last four scenes we've talked about. Things standing in the distance, something pending, something.
Yeah, looming and
pregnant pause.
No, because looming is kind of, I guess, the closest word so far.
Eminent,
maybe that might be it. But something about there being a presence that's it's just there waiting.
Yes.
Let's see. What'd you like about The Shining?
Oh, I thought it was utterly brilliant. The scenes in the room. Is it room 217? Room
237. 217.
237. The woman in the bathtub and utterly brilliant.
Yeah.
You mentioned having the night terrors through your whole life. Was there a particular source for them in the teens that you remember?
Not really. I wish I could give you a more concrete answer, but I really don't know. I think in some of the teen years, I think the night terrors subsided and then would just kind of reemerge, and I'm really not sure the source or anything like that.
Okay. Anything happened in real life that scared you as a teen?
As a teen, getting bullied at school. I used to just hate that. I was such an introvert, awkward, shy guy, and getting bullied was probably my biggest fear. And I was terrified of speaking in class. I hated it. We had to give a presentation or something. I dreaded it, just feared it. And I always ended up doing okay, but it was just a constant source of dread for me, getting called on by the teacher. And, those were as mundane as it is now, I remember those being big childhood fears and phobias.
10-second self-advertising spot. We absolutely believe that word of mouth means more than any kind of advertising campaign. If you like what we're doing, please remember to tell somebody about us. Back to the show. So what about adult years? We talked about the encyclopedia. Any particular books or movies stand out to you?
I started finding films like Blood on Satan's Claw, which in the UK it was called Satan's Skin, an early 70s horror film, and The Witchfinder General, a Michael Reeves film. Yep. And I just love those films. Those were highly influential. Horror Express, I don't know if you guys have seen that one with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Brilliant, really fun, like sort of pop culture film where I think it's a Spanish film. Yes, they throw everything at the characters that you can possibly imagine, including having Telly Savalas come on at the end as an evil.
Yes, that's right. I forgot
that. Just nuts, And, films like that, and not as much in the theater because, I've seen a lot of great horror films in the theater over the years, but, when I was a young adult and stuff, it just wasn't as big of a money-making genre as it is now. Now horror is just dominating, the box office because there are so many fans now, and I'm happy to see it. But again, I hate to sound like an old man, but it just boggles my mind that what was once our, the area of nerds is now so widespread and popular. But I'm glad because I feel like a lot of our contemporary filmmakers are doing a lot of brilliant stuff with horror. And I think it's this genre that lends itself to experimentation and experimenting with structure and themes and all sorts of things that, you can't necessarily find in a rom-com or a musical or something like that. So it's such a great genre for that. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a number of different little niches, shall we say, that the internet, I think, has really helped over the last 20 years. Any kind of personality that you could think of that existed in small town where you'd have only one person like that in the whole town. Once the internet came along, it allowed each of those one person in each small town to, go to a message board and find each other. And all of a sudden now you've got 1 million people able to get together and talk and do things like that. So
I think that's very true. And that's actually probably what has created this, more widespread mainstream popularity of all these things, superhero movies and all that. I think would probably be what you just said, that suddenly people from around the world could, congregate on the net and it opened up new avenues. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. Comics, horror, DJs, I'm trying to think of what else, computer people, goths, like all these different little subcultures have all found community, shall we say.
And I haven't even begun to explore YouTube like you guys have. I go on there a lot, but I think there's a whole world of stuff that I'm not even aware of.
Oh yeah.
Ghost hunters, and I know there's TV shows and stuff, but I came across a podcast. It was talking about like some famous hauntings from the 2000s and stuff. And I started exploring that because I was fascinated. And then I realized how much of a world there is on YouTube for all sorts of genres and subgenres like you're talking about. And it's just a whole different venue, So it's just fascinating. It's so much is readily available. And, I love it because the young people today have so much access to stuff that we just didn't have when we were young.
There's a whole subgenre now called analog horror, which is about, all of the, different forms of analog media that existed before everything went digital, because kids today, that was a world before their time. And so, there's this whole other universe of stuff on YouTube where it's imitating, VHS, it's imitating the old like 1980s style arcade games, all kinds of interesting stuff.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
That's a neat aspect I never thought of. Like that's a whole new genre of horror that has been invented that we weren't privy to when we were that age because it's a genre
because
kind
we
of
were
based
living
off
through
of.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't necessarily want to go back to those days, but
Yes.
so much easier now. But I do have a lot of sentimentality about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the movies you did name. Blood on Satan's Claw. What'd you like about that one?
For one thing, the score is incredibly beautiful. You got just when you have a moment, you can find the score on there, and it's so hauntingly beautiful. But the film is about I think it's 16th or 17th century England, and a farmer digs up bones of what is probably a demon, and how it sort of slowly infests the village. And it's just got a great mood and a real sense of dread to it. And it's also, and as a counterpoint, this kind of haunting score makes it slightly lyrical. It's just a fascinating movie. And it's, it's one of the 3 cornerstones of the whole folk horror movement.
Yep.
And I do really like folk
one of the
horror.
other 2 being Witchfinder General.
And what's the third one? Oh, it's
Wicker Man.
Wicker Man, yes, of course.
Yeah. I missed the title. What was the first one again? Wicker Man, Witchfinder General, and
the one we're talking about now.
Claws.
Blood on Satan's Claws. Yeah, I've heard of that one. It's on my list.
I think in the UK it was called Satan's Skin, but they retitled it here to make it more lurid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what'd you like about Witchfinder General?
I really like the mood and the tone. I like the setting again. I'm a sucker for stuff that takes place in Britain because I like a lot of us, I have British ancestry, but I think more so it's the Brits really did have a good handle on how to make things, haunting and scary. It's such an old country and very moody. And in the case of Witchfinder General, I would sort of compare it to The Wild Bunch and Night of the Living Dead. They were all sort of around the same time. They all explore violence and the effect of violence on communities, and kind of those late 60s social themes are kind of interwoven in there. At least that's my read on it. Same thing with The Wild Bunch. When people were shocked by that, I believe Peckinwatt would tell people, you see this in Vietnam on the nightly newscast every week. So I think Witchfinder General kind of plays into that because it's tame by today's standards, but if you take it in the context of its time, I think the violence and the idea of, how violence and exploitation, affects especially the poorer community. I think it's
bringing it home.
Yeah, and I could be reading too much into this, but because I've been a lifelong film fan and sort of film historian, I'm just incapable of watching a film without understanding when it was made, what was going on when it was made, and how it might reflect that.
Well, on a more personal level, I mean, you've commented on, concerns about being bullied and things like that. And so if you're sensitive to the effects of violence, not only on yourself, but, and then wanting the community to understand the effects of violence on people like yourself, and then that being an educational thing for the whole community, I could see that being something that spoke to you personally. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think that's a great analysis. I never thought of that. If you work on the side as a counselor, I'll sign up tomorrow.
I do not, mainly because, I already have a job for one, but there's a whole lot of licensing and stuff like that I'd have to go through to get into that career. I've already got my certifications in one track. I don't want to go down a second one.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, jack of all trades.
Yeah. Horror Express. What'd you like about that one?
It's just, you take these great characters and you put them on a train that's going from, if I'm remembering it correctly, like Peking to somewhere in Europe, and there's an alien inside a fossil of a humanoid that takes control of people's minds and slowly takes over the train. It's just awesome. And Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing are great as the pair that has to work together. And they're both heroic for once. And I just love that movie. It's great fun.
Mm.
You can't look at it seriously, because there's so many plot holes, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but like the ending, you're just kind of like, where did this come from? Like, but it's so much fun. It's just one of those ones where you can sit and watch it and just enjoy the ride.
If you're thinking about the ending the part of the ending that I'm thinking of, it's kind of a callback to the old Westerns, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
For Chris's benefit, this too old of a movie for it to be a spoiler at this point.
Yeah.
But what they do is the survivors of this monster on this train, they basically go back to the caboose, detach it, and then send a telegraph to the next station head that says, send the train down this other course. And it's going too fast, so it like goes over a ravine and around a bend, and it just like falls off the track. Which that's what I'm saying.
That's one way of doing it.
Yeah, and it's a callback to cowboys and westerns, because that's the kind of thing that they would have in a movie like that.
Yeah, and that's a great analysis of maybe what they were trying to do with the whole train thing at the end. It's so nuts. I love it.
I don't know that it was necessarily a thing that they were trying to do as much as like, how are we going to get out of this?
Yeah, exactly.
From a writer's point of view.
I think if I'm remembering this correctly, the filmmakers had access to the train model that was used on like a bigger budget historical epic. And so I think about the Russian Tsar, I believe. And I think that they were just like a lot of horror filmmakers have had to do over the year. They were utilizing what they had, like, how can we base a film around this? And what do we do with the prop at the end? And
like Steve was saying, they need to figure out how to end the thing. They're like, hey, what's that prop they got over there in lot 2?
No, well, I think he's saying the opposite, that they had this prop that some other movie had used, and then they were trying to make an extra buck off of it. And so it's like, okay, well, what can we do with this?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's at least what I seem to remember. And I could be mistaken here, but, horror filmmakers, as we all know, have had to make do with so little over the years, that it brings out their creativity. So they come up with a nuts ending like that Western ending.
I've never heard that about that particular movie, but I have read that type of thing about other movies. For example, the first Roger Corman Little Shop of Horrors. He basically filmed it in 3 days off of a set from a previous movie, and they were just trying to squeeze out an extra couple bucks out of this set that they had already built for some other movie.
100%. That was Roger Corman right there. 100%.
Let's see. In adult life, anything in life terrify you?
For some reason, there was a time in the late 90s or 2000s where I kept getting shot at randomly.
What?
Yeah, and
for real. Not in dreams.
Yeah, I won't bore you too much with the details. Well, one night I had already lived in LA, and my girlfriend and I went to spend the night, spend like a weekend in Phoenix with my mom. And I went out the night before we left. I went out and was putting a suitcase in the car, packing something in the car. And there was a random drive-by where they shot at me for some reason. And it was so weird, because if I hadn't been out there at that exact point at like 11:30 or 12 or something, I wouldn't have been shot at. And then the guy who did the shooting was the driver. And when the police showed up, they took the bullet casings out of the whatever's left over. They took out of the neighbor's wall. And he asked me where I was standing, and he's like, this guy was a really good shot. If he hadn't been driving, he might have hit you. And then the second time was here in LA in, I want to say it was the late 90s or early 2000s. I pulled up outside my apartment, and I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, because there were two gangs in cars shooting at each other with Uzis. And I had got out of the car, and there was a moving van right in front. And, fate was kind to me, because I was just casually walking past the moving van, and it shielded the bullets. But one of them hit an inch from the gas tank in my car, And for years, I drove that car around with pride because everybody would stop me and go, "Is that a bullet hole in your gas tank?" And I was like, "Yep." But anyways, my point in telling you these things isn't to sound heroic. It's that I was never scared in those moments for some reason. I don't really know why. I've always, as an adult, been more afraid of failure and things like that, not being able to provide for people or something like that. You know, those more adult fears, if that makes sense. There are still things that I'll read or see that will kind of disturb me or fill me with kind of a sense of dread about humanity, you know, at times where, like, I remember reading, I'm a big Japanophile, and I read in around 2000, I read a book called Embracing Defeat about how the Japanese turned defeat after war into victory, but there was reference in there to some of the terrible things that the Japanese army did to human experiments and things, human surgeries.
What was
without
it, U-731?
Yes, and that kind of thing just, you know, can ruin a day or a week for me because it just like fills me with a sense of like, can people really be this bad? Like, you know, and I think I'm even more world weary now, but like the recent Epstein files and stuff, I try to stay away from it, but I'm just like, you know, it shows you how depraved some people can become. And that kind of thing does disturb the hell out of me.
Yeah. As it should.
Yeah. And have you guys ever seen Lake Mungo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, you know, it didn't ruin my day or anything, but I think that film is utterly brilliant. And that was really a film that had an effect on me, you know.
How so?
Just it was the filmmaking skills, the way it's told as a sort of, you know, documentary, sort of quasi-documentary about this family that loses their daughter and stuff. It was very disturbing and
it draws you in. It's very it's very well done in that documentary or mockumentary style where, like, I'd say within 10 minutes, you're just glued to it. Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Not to veer too deeply off of, you know, a serious subject, but to go back to the gunshot thing. You might remember this cartoon from the 80s. It was a Far Side cartoon with 3 deer standing around a water cooler. And one of the deer has a bullseye on his chest. And the caption is, "Bummer of a birthmark, Al."
I was that deer for a while.
Yes.
It's crazy. Like, I don't know. It was just weird, you know, like something happens with, I think there's 2 things that happen in moments like that of maybe more overt danger. People either do the smart thing, which is like duck and cover or scream and run, you know, or your mind just kind of stops and you're just kind of fascinated by the whole thing. And the first time I got shot, I was the latter. I remember thinking, just standing straight still and thinking, there's someone shooting at me, you know. Really
just
hating
in disbelief, so you can't make the face or squinch up. Just, is this happening right now?
Really hating the guy, you know, that did it. Really hating him. Yeah. Anyways, thankfully, hopefully that phase of my life has passed, and there won't be any.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
it sounds like a gang initiation kind of thing. Like, go kill somebody.
I think it was. Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, flipping that question around, has there ever been a time in your adult life when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Yeah, I mean, there have been, you know, when first time I went to Japan, I remember thinking, like, this is everything I thought it would be. It's such a great country, you know, ancient history. And I was very blessed. I told a contact who used to work at Warner Brothers that I was going, and he instigated getting a private tour of Toho Films where some of the high-ups in the company took my girlfriend and I, and we were also escorted by a woman who lived in Japan who worked for Warner Brothers, and they took us and we toured the stages. They were like, this is the stage where Kurosawa shot Seven Samurai. And,
Jesus.
And they showed me some of the Godzilla stuff. And then...
Okay, you did Japan, right? I just went tourist places like fucking Shibuya and other shit. You did it right.
Well, I was just very, very lucky, very blessed. And at the end, and they may do this with all of the people that take on tours, but they had the original oxygen destroyer prop that kills Godzilla at the end of the first film, and I got to hold it and take a photo, and I was I remember being in heaven. I was such a nerd.
Hold it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Unless it was a fake prop and they were fibbing and,
I choose to believe it was the original. That's my headcanon.
Well, not that I would blame them if they did. I mean,
no, I wouldn't either, because can you imagine some idiot, myself in particular, dropping it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, then they can put it back together with gold.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
I can't remember what the name of that is, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. When something breaks, you put it together with gold and make it stronger, I think is kind of the idea of it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily stronger, but it's more attractive.
Yes. I think you're right.
Let's see. And then to be clear, I don't mean it's more attractive because it's got gold in it. I mean, it's more attractive because their impression is that things that have been broken and put back together again are, significant.
Yes, agreed.
That's deep.
So these two questions again, we're going to ask as a pair, starting with the negative first. Do you remember the last person you hurt?
Probably arguing with my significant other, or
not uncommon.
My family can be harsh at times, and I trace it back to survival in the desert, 120 and so years ago, and so, but they can be really harsh, and I'm trying to tone that down. But that was probably it. I don't think I've hurt anyone's feelings or hurt anyone at work lately. But I think that's probably it.
Okay. Do you remember the last person you helped?
I think I'm very helpful to the people I work with, and I provide a lot of support. It's part of the job of being a post supervisor on a film is, it's not in the job description, but you become sort of the de facto, counselor or trying to set a mood to keep things light, because working on any film can be very stressful. There's high pressure, there's limited time, and there's just a lot of pressure, and it's a great industry. It's fun too, but I try to keep things light. And so, just off the top of my head, I would say that was probably it, last week, I've been very blessed in my career to work with great people, but I've heard horror stories where, a film set or a cutting room can be, a place of, dread, or people just, afraid to, to trip, but I've never encountered that. I've only encountered really great people, but that was a long-winded answer to your question. I think it was probably someone last week in the cutting room.
Good answer.
Good answer. Yeah. Sharing experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah.
Let's see. So for the next question is not just going to be about horror and not just about any particular time of life. Mm-hmm. Any genre over your entire life, what movie would you say you've watched more times than any other?
Is it Godzilla?
No, shockingly, I'm a huge James Bond fan.
Okay.
And there was a time in my life, and I still love the movie, but it's kind of random. I would watch the film For Your Eyes Only every time it came on cable. I was young, and I would just sit and watch it. And when all is said and done, I think I've seen that film more times than anything. And probably the strongest runner-up would be The Road Warrior. Mad Max 2. That was hugely influential film for me.
What'd you like about For Your Eyes Only?
I just love James Bond, and I love that character, and I love the settings, and that was just happened to be the film at a certain time in my life where I was obsessive about it. You know what I mean? And I still look at it very fondly, but I love all the Bond films. I've always been a real Bond guy, and they're kind of my what do you call it, like comfort. You go back to something because it's comfortable, and you can just sit and watch it over and over again. And the Bond films are that for me.
So you said it was a comfort movie. What about it made it comfortable to you?
I think the character, and it's part of a series, and it kind of felt like going home because I had always watched those films, so it always feels. Getting back into that universe always feels to me very comfortable. I've always liked the British stuff, British horror and Bond films and films set in Britain, and Monty Python and all of that stuff. So it's just very comfortable to me.
I initially was going to ask what you said felt like going home. I was going to ask if it was something that you shared with maybe your mom or dad, but then you brought up the British connection. So maybe there's something about Britain that feels like home. One of the two, both.
Yeah, I think it does. I think Britain does in some ways, and I didn't even know we had Brit. I didn't think about ancestry when I was young, but I was always drawn to British culture, and we'd watch PBS and Masterpiece Theater and Monty Python and films that took place in Britain and Arthurian legends and all that sort of thing. I was always really drawn to that, more than maybe some other cultures or thing, just really, really drawn to that. And I still am. I'm very fat Doctor Who, all that nerd stuff. I'm very, I still find it, welcoming, it's just been a big part of my life, all that stuff.
Okay. All right. You mentioned, British horror and, Christopher Lee earlier. So that, that kind of got that on my mind at that point, but I got to bring it up now. Have you ever seen or heard of, Raw Meat, AKA Deadline?
Yes, that's a great movie.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
And the combination of Christopher Lee and Donald Pleasance and just at each other the whole time. So good.
Yeah, so good. Donald Pleasance is great in that. And the movie, there's that kind of tracking shot when you first go into the underground, and see. Oh, so good.
Great practical effects of just all the gore. Like, that was mid 70s, if I recall. And that's pretty good stuff for the 70s.
It is really great movie. More people should see that. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Excuse me. Going back to the previous line of conversation, I'm wondering if it's just something about, I don't want to use the term hero worship because that's not the right thing, but like where you drew the connection from Bond to Arthurian legends to Doctor Who, there's something about the protagonist, for lack of a better word.
Maybe.
I think that's interesting. I like a good... My favorite protagonists are the sort of jaded anti-hero who does the right thing. And the greatest example of that for me is, Mad Max. Yeah. Like, he is totally amoral sort of at the beginning, but you see flashes of humanity, but he always ends up sort of doing the right thing. And I love that character. I was the first age generation to see Star Wars, and we all loved Han Solo because he was like more of a rogue, he wasn't the knight in shining armor. He was kind of in it for himself, and I just love those characters, those sort of, Toshiro Mifune is the samurai like characters who are potentially amoral or selfish, but do the right thing. I'm very drawn to that type of character.
Wonder what it is about the selfish aspect of it that keys in. Are you selfish?
I could be, or I think I am. I could be.
Who is it?
But I always go back to the Road Warrior. I think that's just the perfect archetype, or the Clint Eastwood films, the Leone films. He's just this amoral bounty hunter, but there's always a sense of good in there. I just think it creates really good conflict that makes a story more compelling than if you have the perfect hero, and Bond sort of ties into that, in that not as much in the earlier films, but certainly in the Daniel Craig films, they got a little bit more into him being, a little bit less of a knight in shining armor. I think Sean Connery had that kind of edge to him
he was immoral in the Christian sense.
Yes, exactly. He was. He definitely was.
Yeah. So if those are the two movies you've seen more often than any other, would one of those be your favorite movie, or would you pick something else as your favorite movie?
Oh, that's a great question. I think certainly the Road Warrior would be in my top 10, and definitely the Seven Samurai. After that, it's Once Upon a Time in the West. I love those lyrical westerns, and the Road Warrior would definitely be in there.
Okay. So coming back to horror now, do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical? I actually see 2 or 3 different ways this could go. we talked about monsters. We talked about cult. Or not cult. What's the
occult?
No. Wicker Man.
Folk horror.
Folk. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely love folk horror, and I tend to like supernatural horror more than slasher. I like supernatural themes, and whether it's The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby or The Shining. I like good ghost stories and demonic stories and all that sort of thing. When I was young, in the 70s, there was a whole wave of public fascination with the occult. I think you younger people may, certainly wouldn't have a memory of it, but may not realize how occult books and the movies of the week I spoke about earlier, there were so many horror themed ones. There was just a real fascination from the late 60s up until about the Star Wars time with, occult subjects. And I think it was part of the counterculture or something like that. But when The Exorcist came out, it was such a big deal. I was too young to go, but it was such a huge deal in popular culture. And so I got way off topic there, and I'm sorry. I'm fascinated by more of the supernatural stuff, and like we talked about before, folk horror. I really like folk horror, and I do like the zombie stuff, but I felt like it got done to death. But then the fascinating thing about the zombie genre is that good filmmakers constantly find sort of new ways to make it interesting. So yeah.
It's like a zombie combination. It's almost like I'll say a better version of what you see with all the shark films. Like there's avalanche shark, sand shark, closet shark. But there are a lot of good zombie adaptations. So it's a very versatile genre.
Yeah, it is.
I think what he's getting at is there have been things that have been added to the au revoir, for lack of a better word, that because. Originally it was just the voodoo and the initial voodoo zombie, but then it turned into with I Am Legend and Last Man on Earth, it was a virus, and then I can't remember what movie it was that said, okay, well, they don't just want to eat humans, but they specifically want to eat brains, and then you got the fast zombies, or if you even want to call them zombies. Not going to get into that argument, but like there's things that are being added to I wouldn't just say literature, but I'm not finding my words very well there. But there's something like being added to the mix.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that there have been zombie films that come out where I'm just like, oh my God, this is so tired. It's been 20 years of this, but then they add something to it that I'm like, okay, that's kind of enough of a twist to make it interesting, and that's, you guys can tell me, but that seems like that was sort of one of the last big outbreaks of, a certain type of really popular. I mean, it's not the only one, because there's the whole found footage thing that was extremely popular. And now, like I said, and you guys are probably better aware of this than I am. I think on YouTube, there's probably like whole new genres of things that are more widely popular that I'm just not as familiar with. But it's just interesting what a great filmmaker can do with what should be a tired genre and kind of revitalize it.
Other than analog, I can't think of there being anything that is really that new or different. It's just kind of in the same vein that we're talking about here with zombies, of adding to the culture. There are, for example, like in the cosmic subgenre, you've got SCP, which stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, which was a website that people could go and post stories within a mythos. It's got a particular framework that it's kind of like Lovecraft, but it's its own thing. Like it's
wow.
So it's a little bit of an Outer Limits, Twilight Zone feel to it as well.
Wow, that's interesting.
Twilight Zone multiplied with X-Files, because it's very government. Like it's the SCP organization. Like there's an organization that exists to protect us from these kinds of things, but it's still very much in the cosmic horror vein. It's just something that's been added to the mix, for lack of a better word.
No, that's fascinating. I'm going to check that out.
Yes, I can send you some links.
I would love that.
So this is where we would talk about common themes that have been cropping up in the conversation, and maybe talk about how those intersect with the genre overall. The kind of the things that have been cropping up about the monsters' presence, the sense of dread, and a couple other things that have come up in the call. But I think really the best way to phrase this is, it's like there's a question, and then what's the answer going to be? This also kind of ties in with your fear of public speaking too, that, I'm going to be tested on something. Am I going to have the answer?
I think that's fascinating, and I think that is probably a common theme. Absolutely.
And you also talked about last minute rescue. It's pulling out the answer at the last minute.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And I do like that, as you more eloquently put it, sense of dread. And one of the things, whenever I've been trying to write a short or something, that I've always wrestled with that probably younger people don't is, there's the sense of anticipation, and then oftentimes, at least in the older films, the letdown of what when you actually see the monster or something. And I'm always kind of like, how much can you not show and make an audience of today, enjoy the film? You know what I'm saying? Like, how much can you just sort of present a sense of dread and a feeling and a mood and a vibe without, getting really commercial? Will something like that sell? And I wish I could more eloquently explain it, but it's just something I think about all the time is there was a filmmaker in the 30s and 40s named Val Lewton who did these great horror films called I Walk with a Zombie and The Seventh Victim about Satanists, and he never showed a monster or anything. It was all real reality based. And I just wonder how a film like that would go over now, if audiences would embrace it, or if they expect so much more now that, we can do so much more. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
I've seen a few films that are very subtle, don't show the monster, that went over well with critics and audiences. So I think it's all in how you do it, the delivery.
Yeah, copy that.
There's that. There's also sort of, how can I say this? So what I was saying a minute ago was about kind of being put on the spot. What am I going to do when the other shoe drops? Mm-hmm. But then there are also movies where the other shoe never drops, which is its own sense of fear. Like, how do I live with the fact that the other shoe's never dropping? And so when you say, but how far can you go without showing the monster? Maybe that's part of that conversation of how do you deal with something, a shoe that never drops?
I like that idea. I think that almost might be the most terrifying of all.
It can be a little frustrating at times. Yeah, I've seen movies that do that, and I've seen some that do it well. I've seen some that just end up kind of frustrating at the end because you wait and you never get it. But if it's a good story, if it's well done, then it works.
Well, the reality of it is that because there are situations like that in real life, and the reality of how you deal with it is it goes through phases. It's like going through the 5 stages of grief. And you don't go through them in a straight line. You bounce back and forth between them based on whatever it is outside of that you're dealing with in that particular moment. So,
right.
I think in the situation like that, it's just, where do you define the start and end points of your story is going to define what falls within the story.
No, it's that whole concept is so interesting. I think you may have invented a genre called the shoe never drops. It's
fascinating. What's funny? Well, we've talked to some other guests who, and this is, to be honest, a very small fraction of our guests, but there have been 3, 4 that they're very nervous, anxious personalities that they always feel like that. And then the media that they said they preferred, which I'm not coming up with any names off the top of my head, but they said, they liked those movies and books because it felt most true to them, that because this is how my life is.
Wow. Yeah.
I can think of the names of the guests off the top of my head. I don't know if I should say them or not. But yeah, we've had 3 or 4 probably that have expressed situations like that, and it's not very common. The kind of interesting thing to bringing this up. So we're going into our 7th year doing this, and I started writing a book about. So not every guest gets the same things out of horror, but we were kind of curious, if we start speaking to a statistically relevant number of people, what patterns are going to emerge. Not everybody falls into the same bucket, but how many buckets are there? Which ones are most common or least common? And the one that I'm talking about here, I think I started writing that book when we had roughly 125 guests and 4 people. I mean, that's still like a 4%. I think that is statistically relevant, because if you then expand that to 1,000 guests or 1 million people, it's still going to be a statistically relevant number, which is interesting in its own conversation. But coming back to you, so this thing about being put on the spot and having the right answer or coming up with an answer. I guess one question we could ask is there something about that from personal experience speaks to you?
I think so. I think that I'm fascinated by, stories where the characters are put in situations, almost impossible situations, and how they respond. When I saw Barbarian, you guys have seen Barbarian?
Yep.
Brilliant film. Zach Kreger is brilliant filmmaker. And I wanted so badly for the guy in it to do the right thing. I was really hoping he would do the right thing, and he ultimately didn't. But I remember really pulling for this, selfish character to do the right thing. And that's just one example. But I like to see what characters in pressure cookers, how they respond to things. And, maybe it comes from, judging myself from not responding the right way at certain times or not. I'm not really sure where that comes from, but I just think it makes for really compelling, drama.
Mm. And then the follow-up to that, you're going to say something, Chris?
I agree. It does.
The follow-up is, why horror? Because can't you explore that in other genres, or have you?
Well, I love all genres of films and books and stuff, but it's always horror for me. And I just think what I would love to know from all your guests, is from you, do we all have this? Is there a common theme for why those of us who are drawn to this at a young age are drawn to it? Is it that, some counselor would say, you're just trying to control your fear as a kid, but I was certainly fearful, but I don't believe that every kid that liked horror was, and I think that there's got to be some reason that we go, down that path. But I really do like the genre and the darker stuff. And I just find it so much more fascinating and comfortable even. I told my partner, Danielle, who's also my creative partner, and we've known each other forever. We, since graduate school, and she's gotten through me, she's become a fan of the genre and stuff. But like we go up to the Universal City Walk for their Halloween Horror Nights. And I tell her, I'm like, you see that haunted house there? That's like the dream world where I live. Like that's where I'm comfortable of, in some gothic old Universal horror creepy mansion. Like that would be my dream home. I just love that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So some of the buckets that people have fallen into, the first one that comes to mind is power dynamics. There's a lot of people who have concerns about power dynamics, but even that can kind of fall into a couple different subdomains, because there's some, it's about empowerment. Mm-hmm. Some people it's about a rage thing, injustice. Another big one that comes up a lot is identification. There have been people that we've talked to who, because they were outcast in the small community before the internet became a thing, they felt like they were the outcast, and so they identified with the monster who was also the outcast. And so I'm not alone.
100%. Yeah.
There are people who love it just for the joy of violating social norms. There's probably about 20 different subcategories. I think that I started to make a table of contents kind of thing. I haven't finished writing the book yet, but there's lots of different things that people get out of it, but probably roughly 15 to 20 that are most common, at least.
For me, I think it would be the misfit category. I think, you identify with the monster, Mm-hmm. I remember reading, and it's the internet. I can't say this is true, but Elvira Cassandra Peterson, she supposedly was scalded by hot water as a kid, and her body, a huge portion of her body was burned, and she got harassed at school about it, and she started identifying with the monsters, and then she became a horror aficionado and then turned that into an actual career. And that's a great example of somebody, identifying with our genre and, making a living out of it and touching other people's lives and all those things. So that's a win-win if that story is correct.
Yeah.
Turning something horrible into something good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool. Well, I think we got a pretty good summary for you and what you get out of horror. I guess really the last question is two last questions. One is, do you think we're accurate on that, or do you think we need to, slightly tweak it or adjust it? And then the other question being, was there anything earlier in the conversation that came to mind that you didn't get a chance to say? Maybe the conversation took a left turn.
I think you guys are very accurate. You're really, I've been listening to your podcast, and you do a great job. You do a really great job.
Thank you.
And it's so refreshing to have a venue like this where we can talk about the genre and what we love, as opposed to the more technical aspects of, working on films or doing this or that. And I really do. I get more out of this because I find it fascinating to hear the influences and things that other people, have with our genre. So you guys do just a brilliant job with that.
Thank
and
you.
the only thing I would add that I thought about while we were talking, it wasn't that we went on a left turn. It's just, as I think I alluded to earlier, my family had connections with the native tribes of Arizona, and my uncle would go up to Second Mesa up in the northeast corner of Arizona, where the Hopi and the Navajo are, and he would come back and regale us with these terrifying stories of the beliefs up there of Two Hearts, evil witches called Two Hearts skinwalkers, and the belief that is all very real. And I'm not making any judgment. I'm a cynical guy, but I'm not making any judgments in the story. In the newspapers up there, at least back, when I was younger, you would see, a skinwalker, a little article about so-and-so saw a skinwalker out near Shiprock or something. And that had a really profound influence on me because it brought it home. It was terrifying to me because I thought, oh, this stuff is real up there. There are really scary legends. And my uncle was a great storyteller. So he would tell stories of driving home late at night on desert highways and seeing things tracking him and jumping in front of his truck. And so I kind of grew up with that. So that was also a huge influence.
Cool. If you like that kind of thing, check out our interview with Laird Barron. He was raised up in the Alaskan wilderness, and he's got a couple of stories like that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I will. I would love to hear that.
Well, before we hit the closing here, do you want to let people know what you're currently working on?
I can't say the title, but it is a film you're all going to love. It comes out this year, and it's one you've all been waiting for, it, especially people who are younger than I. And I'll leave it at that, but we'll get in touch after it comes out. But it's going to be brilliant, and you're going to love it. You are going to love it.
Cool. Is it Gremlins 3?
No. I know I work with Adam Stein and Zach Lipovsky, the directors of Final Destination 6. They are writing Gremlins 3, and they're great guys. So I think that's going to be really good.
Cool. Well, we're going to get together with you offline and create a bio page and link to whatever it is that you'd like to link to. So we can do that and, get together with you offline, get some pictures and bios so we can do promotional materials, and we'll link to whatever it is that you'd like to link to. So if anybody would like to follow up with you about whatever it is that you want to link to, you go to horrormakesushappy.com, go to the episodes page, scroll down to Darin's name, click on that. That'll take you to his bio page and go from there. Thank you for your time. Thank you to anybody out there listening. Main thing you can do at this moment is like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, help us grow.